Hello, I'm Jenny. I am the artistic director of a company called Graeae, and I am a white woman. I have grey blondish hair tied up. I have black sunglasses on my head. I have a white dress on and a silver curly whirling necklace. That is my audio description of myself. I move my hands around, sign language, and I am deaf. I have a hearing aid in my left ear. I am at Graeae's offices, and we have our home in East London, UK. It is a fully accessible office space. We have a beautiful rehearsal space. All the bathrooms are accessible. There's a shower, we have lighting, we have a library full of plays. It's a very, very beautiful theatrical home that we have. It is a passion for accessibility and inclusion that fuels Graeae as a company. Graeae was set up 40 years ago by a man called Nabil Shaban and his colleague Richard Tomlinson. Nabil himself is a wheelchair user, a small statured man with unruly, wiry black hair, and he wanted to be an actor. But going to all the drama schools, going to the theatres across the UK, people went, "Excuse me, no, we do not want someone like you on our stages. You will upset our audiences." This was the attitude 40 years ago when Nabil wanted to be an actor. So this was back in the 80s when the world was starting to open up a little bit around real diversity. So Nabil went to the Arts Council of England and said, "I want to set up my own company." Because he thought if he's not going to be included on the stages or involved in plays, he will set up his own company and make his own plays, which is exactly what he did. So he set up Graeae. Graeae, the name, is a Greek myth. The three Graeae sisters shared between them an eye and a tooth. And then Perseus came and stole them because he wanted to know how to kill the Medusa. So of course they tell him because they want their eye and their tooth back. Perseus doesn't tell them. He throws them into the wilderness, and the Graeae sisters are left screaming and defenceless. And so we at Graeae, yes, we are screaming. We're screaming for our rights to be on any stage, in any film, any radio programme, any play. We have a right to be part of the fabric of society and a right to be part of culture. We are not defenceless, no. But like the Graeae sisters, we share what we have. We don't know, if someone is a wheelchair user, we need to think about a ramp. If someone has no legs, we don't go and find legs. We work with who people are and what their diversity and differences bring to us. That is the unique quality of a company like Graeae. Graeae operates within the social model of disability. 40 years ago, it was very much the medical model, which is what is wrong with you. Meaning that the disabled person, they had to sort it out, they were wrong, they were a burden, they were just like, ill. And it's like, hang on a minute, no. So we have fought as a group of people to change that, to create the social model, which means that access and inclusion is everyone's responsibility. So I couldn't be here on this Zoom doing this with all of you if I didn't have my two sign language interpreters, Jude and Vicky. So that is my access, that is my right to have them. And it's the same when buildings, you go to a building, there are stairs. Stairs are a massive disadvantage for anyone who is a wheelchair user. So buildings need to rethink how they are built, to think about inclusion and access for a real wide diversity of people. So access is everyone's responsibility. It is part of the social fabric of society. And the social model means that we have the same right to opportunities, and those opportunities be in education, higher education, university, drama schools, anything. We should have the same level of equality given to non-disabled people. We're not quite there yet by any stretch of the imagination, but that is why companies like Graeae are so important, because we're using theatre as a way to be visible, to show the non-disabled people that we can be in any play, that we are here and we're not going anywhere. So Graeae's vision is to create world-class accessible theatre, breaking down barriers and challenging preconceptions by placing deaf and disabled artists centre stage. And our mission is to ignite artistic curiosity, pioneer a radical dramatic language, and champion accessibility by providing a platform of opportunities for new generations of deaf, disabled and neurodivergent artists locally, nationally and internationally through the creation of trailblazing theatre. That's what we do. And our strategy, and I'll read some of this, our strategy is to create world-class theatre and produce and tour theatre that can really impact on the wider mainstream world, and create theatre that's very Graeae and providing a platform, the skill, vision and excellence deaf and disabled and neurodivergent artists. We perform at a real diversity of theatres across the UK and the world, and every new theatre we go to, we develop and nurture new audience, deaf, disabled and non-disabled audiences, and we welcome everyone to come and watch the work of Graeae. We are real advocates of championing accessibility, really encouraging theatres to think about their theatres, backstage, front of house. Where is the real accessibility? What could be changed to ensure that we can go there to perform? Because we will not perform anywhere that is not fully accessible for our actors and our creative teams. And we nurture and develop new talent. We have our own actor training courses called Ensemble. So we're developing the next generation of actors. We have a programme called Beyond, which where we are meeting and supporting and nurturing 49 artists. This was set up during the pandemic. Where we are supporting 49 artists to make links with their local theatres to be able to develop their own practice and work. And over the last 7 years, we've been running a programme called Right to Play, and we have developed a cohort of over 40 writers, and we are working with some of those writers as we speak. Our show 10 Nights is written by Zahid Khan, and that is on at the Bush Theatre in London. He is one of the writers that we have developed. As a company, we also promote excellent governance. We have a very robust business plan, a good financial model. We have a team, deaf, disabled, neurodivergent and non-disabled team at Graeae. And just yesterday, 4 new members arrived at the team, 4 new trainees, 3 new associate directors and 1 producer. So our little team is expanding, because this is all part of the succession planning to build Graeae so that those artists could go out there and be artists within the mainstream world. I want one of our artists to be the head of the National Theatre. That's what I want. We are always exploring new creative horizons by developing the methods of how we tell stories and ensuring that we really represent the wider diversity and intersectionality of the deaf and disabled community. And we have pioneered a whole new theatrical language that is now embraced by the wider mainstream theatre world.
그레이아이의 제니의 발표를 잘 들었고요. 저는 이제 질문자로 오게 된 오세형이라고 합니다. 한국장애인문화예술원에서 일을 하고 있습니다. 아시아계 남성이고요. 50대입니다. 검은 머리를 하고 있고 귀걸이나 반지를 끼지 않고 있고 수염도 기르지 않고 있습니다. 오늘은 그 회색 그 폴라 목까지 올라오는 옷을 입고 있고 역시 회색 마이를 입고 이 자리에 앉아 있습니다. 질문을 좀 드리겠습니다. 그레이아이가 설립되어서 40년간 걸어온 과정이 개척자의 서사시를 잃는 것 같았습니다. 실로 영국에서 뛰어난 연극 단체로서 성장해 오신 과정과 그런 그 역사를 말씀해 주셨어요. 그리고 장애인 예술단체가 어떠한 사회적 메시지를 가질 수 있고 어떠한 구체적인 실천을 도모해 갈 것인지에 대한 하나의 살아있는 모범을 보여주시고 계신 것 같습니다. 그리고 여전히 하나하나 도전하는 작품마다 새로운 주제와 관점을 개척하기 위해서 노력을 하고 계신 것 같아서 인상 깊었습니다. 그래서 그레이아이에는 정말 다양한 장애를 가진 예술가들이 참여하고 계신 것 같습니다. 그런데 저희가 있는 한국에서는 장애인 예술단체가 사실상 장애 유형별로 모여서 예술 활동을 하는 경향이 많습니다. 시각장애인의 경우에는 음악단체를 구성한다든가 발달장애인으로 구성된 무용이나 연극단체처럼 이렇게 장애 유형별로 모여서 많이 활동을 하는데요. 그 이유는 장애 유형별로 정체성이 좀 다르고 같은 장애를 가진 분들끼리는 공유할 수 있는 동질성이 많아서 그런 것 같은데요. 첫 번째 질문 드리겠습니다. 그레이아이가 다양한 장애인으로 구성된 것이 처음부터 가지셨던 원칙이었나요? 아니면 현실적으로 또는 진행해 오면서 어떤 계기에 의해서 이렇게 다양한 장애인들이 모여서 작품 활동을 하시게 된 것일까요?
When Graeae was set up, the main purpose was to give a platform for real diversity of disabled people and deaf people. So that has always been the same for the last 40 years. So, for example, one play might have a blind artist, a deaf artist, someone who is a wheelchair user, someone who has a different mobility impairment, someone who uses a screen reader to speak. That is very typical of a Graeae show, of real diversity of people. And, we share our understanding of each other's disabilities and our access, and we talk about it, so we learn how to support and be there for each other, and then we just get on and create the theatre. So I think, for example, my production of The House of Bernard Alba, all female cast, that had one visually impaired person, 3 deaf actors, one actor who was an amputee, one actor who had a mobility impairment, one actor of short stature. This is true of the world in which we live in, full of diverse physicalities, diverse communications. So Graeae is representing the diversity of humanity.
두 번째 질문 드리겠습니다. 다양한 장애인이 그 공연에 참여한다고 했고 극단에서 활동한다고 하셨는데요. 예술 창작 과정이나 연습 과정에서 서로 간의 이해와 협력을 하는데 좀 어려움이 있을 것 같다는 생각이 듭니다. 사실 저희 한국장애인문화예술원도 이런 활동을 할 때 그런 접근성 문제뿐만이 아니라 아까 말씀드린 그런 장애가 다르기 때문에 경험이 다르고 생각이 다른 모습들을 많이 보게 되는데요. 이러한 그 다름을 어떤 관점에서 바라보고 접근하시는지, 그렇게 해서 그런 것들을 어떻게 풀어가셨는지 사례와 함께 좀 얘기해 주실 수 있으면 좋을 것 같습니다.
All deaf and disabled people, of course, have different experiences of growing up, different experience of battling to get to the point where they find Graeae. It is those differences of experiences, it is those differences of opinions and perceptions that all go into the creating of a piece of theatre. It's very important that people bring themselves and their experiences, because that feeds into my process of working and engaging with them. We make sure that in the rehearsal room there are sign language interpreters for me and for any other deaf actors. We make sure that there are creative enablers to support anybody who needs, if someone visually impaired may need line feeding. We have access workers to take notes. So we ask everyone to do an access audit, stating what they need, what's the best thing that they need in the rehearsal room to enable them to not to have to worry about access and just get on with being the best actor that they can be. Everyone in the company also shares the awareness that we will embed audio description into the narrative. It will be signed and there will be creative captions, and everyone shares the understanding of the aesthetics of access.
시어가의 몰락이라는 작품을 하셨는데 그래야이에서 이 작품을 하면서 저희가 생각하기에 접근의 미학, 접근성의 미학이라고 할 만한 요소가 시작이 됐다라고 보이는데요. 예를 들면 그동안에 공연의 서비스로 활용됐던 뭐 수어 통역이라든가 그 영상 화면 해설 아니면 공연 해설, 오디오 디스크립션이라고 불리는 그런 접근성 서비스가 공연의 외적인 요소였잖아요. 근데 이걸 공연 안으로 적극적으로 끌어들이고 공연의 언어의 하나로 활용하고 이제부터 접근성은 공연의 언어다라고 선언하는 작품처럼 보이는데요. 굉장히 대담한 주장이었죠. 이 이후에 제작하시는 모든 가능한 작품들에서 접근성의 미학 이런 것들을 적극적으로 도입하셨는지가 궁금하고요. 그리고 그레이아이에서 출발한 또는 그레이아이에서 시작한 이런 접근성의 미학이라는 시도가 연극 공연계에 어떤 영향을 미쳤는지가 궁금합니다. 비장애 공연계과에서도 이런 접근성의 미학을 일부 수용했는지 아니면 장애인 단체, 장애인 극단에 제한된 어떤 독특한 표현 행위로 그냥 인식이 되고 있는지 그 영향의 정도가 그동안 해오시면서 어느 정도까지 미쳤는지가 좀 궁금합니다.
So I'll answer that in chunks. When Graeae did The Fall of the House of Usher, the stage directions were so beautifully written that I wrote to Stephen Burkhoff and said, please can I use your stage directions to be spoken by the actors to create an aesthetic of audio description which will make the play accessible to blind people. And that is what we did. In that production, we also pre-recorded all the sign language with a deaf BSL user. So everything became part of the vision of the piece. Nothing was on the side. You know, sometimes interpreters are on the side, or captions are over there, or the audio description is done by a stranger. Everything became part of the creative whole, owned by the whole company. It was an amazing experience. And then after that, we realised it's a much better way to work. It's really creatively challenging, but very, very enriching. We then went on to create Peeling, written by Kate O'Reilly, and she is a visually impaired writer herself. So she used audio description narrative, so the characters used words to have a go at each other. So it became part of the actual text. In our punk musical, the audio description was performed by an actor on stage, but he was talking through an old-fashioned phone where you put coins in, and the phone machine was linked to headsets for blind audiences, so he could speak live on stage, chatting to our blind audience. So if anything went wrong on stage or people were sort of ad-libbing, he could feed all of that direct. And the other characters could come and say, oh, hi, how are you? Oh yeah, my costume's this, this and this. So it became part of the whole punk way of doing things. So every play we ever do, we think, oh, right, what's going to be the aesthetics of access? What can we play with? What does the play tell us? Because you can't just add it on, you have to really invest in the play, and the clue will be there. So, for example, Blasted by Sarah Kane, everything in round brackets, she meant to function like a stage direction. We spoke it. And the actual stage directions we shared amongst the cast, thinking about who was the most important person to stay this bit of stage direction. So everyone, we all invested in that to look at what was going to be right. And in Blasted, we also had deaf performers pre-recorded on a huge screen, styling what was happening on stage. So they were dressed the same as the characters on stage. So in a way, I had 6 performers, not 3, but some were just pre-filmed, with some captioning as well. And when I did Blasted with students from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, I had 3 non-disabled students and 3 deaf actors, BSL users. So we created a fully bilingual play. And that, again, it was an amazing experience to look at, the quality of sign language and how the sign language is such a visual language that sometimes you didn't need lots of acting because the sign would do it. It's Blasted is not a naturalistic play. Most directors direct it naturalistic. We have never done that. We've always played with a form and created something that's rich, accessible, and more true to what Sarah Kane wanted. That is my belief. Our production of Threepenny Opera, Brecht, we had a big cast, deaf, disabled, non-disabled, actor, musicians. And we say right at the beginning of the play, we've got the captions up there. So you'll see some of it on stage doing that. We're doing the captioning. We're all going to take it in turns to do the audio description, just in case there's any blind lot out there. With Brecht, you can be naughty, you can break the fourth wall and be irreverent. So we're telling our audiences, these are all the aesthetics that we are playing with. Enjoy. And then we were part of Graeae's fundamental in part of setting up a consortium of 6 regional big repertory theatres in the UK. So Ramp to the Moon was created. And when you ask whether these aesthetics of Graeae are just Graeae, no, we've been very generous. They are now. All the Ramp productions use the same aesthetics. Many other deaf and disabled companies are using the same aesthetics. So it's out there. Everyone's excited about this way of working because it is so rich and interesting and challenging. So it's not just Graeae anymore. Everyone is doing it. but I am proud that we started it.
네. 굉장히 흥미로운 얘기를 많이 해주셨는데요. 너무 궁금한 게 많지만, 접근성의 미학 관련돼서 하나 좀 여쭤본다면, 펑크 뮤지컬 소개를 해주셨는데, 그 작품의 제목이 어떤 거였나요?
The I didn't say the title, it's called Reasons to be Cheerful, and it's Ian Dury inspired show full of Ian Dury's music.
네. 제가 전에 스코틀랜드에서 만든 뮤지컬이었는데 거기서 수어 통역하고 그 오디오 디스크라이버가 무대에 등장하는 공연을 영상으로 본 적이 있습니다. 그런 시도가 많아지고 있는 것 같아요. 그런데 지금 얘기하신 이 펑크 뮤지컬에서 나오는 전화기를 통해서 오디오 디스크립션을 한다는 발상 같은 경우는 굉장히 흥미롭고 정말 보고 싶어질 정도로 어떻게 느끼고 표현됐을까 궁금한 작품인데요. 혹시 그런 아이디어가 또 적용된 다른 작업들 굉장히 재미있게 이런 접근성이 무대에 기반한 방식으로 들어간 작업들이 또 있을까요? 있으면 소개를 좀 해주셨으면 좋겠습니다.
Oh, blimey. Oh gosh, let me think. Whiter Than Snow was a play by Mike Kenny, and it was a play about a family of short-statured people who put on their own production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the fairy tale. And it has the most beautiful beginning because the character of Frida, played by Kyrina, who's a person of short stature, would walk on the stage and say, "Once upon a time, there was a girl. Once upon a time, there was a small girl. Come on, you can have a look at me. I'm short. Now get over it. Let's move on. We have a story to tell." So it's those sort of things that we play around with and have fun with. I will read correctly from the play. I have the play text, Whiter Than Snow, that is Kyrina.
Yeah.
So it's, once upon a time, on a very wide stage, stands a young woman. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, in a time of war, stands a young woman. Because you don't know anything about her yet, or you will be noticing one thing, and probably only one thing. I'm short. Have a good look at me. You have my permission. Okay, now get on with it. This is our story. And in this play, it's also about eugenics. So there's a character that wants to experiment on all the short people to try and create a perfect human being, but also to eradicate disability. So it was also about, like Nazi Germany, experimented on disabled people and tried to get rid of disabled people. And this is a play that was for 7-year-olds.
지금까지 그 접근의 미학이 굉장히 앞으로도 저희가 궁금한 것이 많고 많이 찾아야 될 새로운 영역이라는 생각이 들기 시작했습니다. 그런 좋은 사례를 들려주셔서 감사드리고요. 다음 질문을 좀 드리겠습니다. 그래아이가 현대 극작가에 대한 작품을 많이 상연하시고 그리고 기존의 작품들도 많이 그 장애인의 접근성을 고려해서 많이 하시는 거를 알고 있는데 사실 그 외에 제가 그래이아이 홈페이지나 자료를 볼 때마다 대형 야외극이나 거리극을 굉장히 많이 봤습니다. 여러 편 이제 보게 됐는데 그걸 이제 제작하시는 이유, 목적 그게 사실 궁금했습니다. 실내극도 이렇게 많이 하시는데 굳이 야외극을 이렇게 많이 제작하시고 발표하시는 그 목적과 동기 좀 있으시면 말씀해 주시면 좋겠습니다.
I think there's something about outdoor performances. There's a real equality because it's free, and for many disabled people, money is an issue, a disabling factor. So it's free, it's accessible, and it means everyone can be there in a real glorious mix as an audience. And it's another platform for our actors. And we have done national festivals in the UK, they're international mainstream festivals, and we have been part of all of them. And we have done one of our productions is the Iron Man, written by Ted Shug. So we have a puppet that's taller than a double-decker bus, operated by someone who is a wheelchair user. And it's a real disability fable, I think, because the Iron Man is really different. He's looked at differently. People stare at him, but then he connects with a young boy who doesn't judge him. And that's exactly what we, as a deaf and disabled community, need. We don't want to be judged. We want to be part of society, not judged. We've also trained up a whole cohort of deaf and disabled artists to climb, people have got good core strength, but to climb these sway poles, and they stand on the top of the poles and they sway. So we've created a few shows with these sway pole performers, and the sway poles are from a company called Strange Fruit in Australia. And the then artistic director came and did a collaboration with us, but my actors were on the ground and her actors were on the sway poles. And I said, I think we need disabled people up on the poles. She said, oh no, that's not possible. I said, try me. So we got some funding and we trained 14 deaf and disabled people to climb poles, to stand and to sway, to take off their prosthetic, wave their prosthetic around but still sway. So we really do challenge and break down boundaries of what is possible. We did a huge project commemorating 100 years of World War I with disabled war veterans, all whom have had their limbs blown off in combat. And so these were non-actors, but through the process of working with me, they became performers. And it was an incredible production and very, very moving, because the 2 million people that came back from World War I disabled were just, they said it was better to come back dead than to come back as a disabled person. And that is still true. When people get wounded and become disabled through war, their lives mean very little, but a dead person is always a hero. And all of our outdoor work is accessible. We have different ways of doing audio description. Sometimes it's live with the actors, sometimes it's in the ear. For blind audiences, everything is always signed. It's always fully accessible in the same way as our indoor work is.
야외극이 그런 의도로 시작됐고 그런 내용들을 담고 있었다는 얘기를 들으니 많이 이해가 됩니다. 좀 의아했습니다. 아이언맨 같은 작품을 보고 왜 저렇게 큰 깡통 로봇 같은 그런 조형물을 연극에 넣어서 했을까라는 궁금증이 있었는데요. 많이 해소됐습니다. 여기에서 더 나가서 최근에 그래이아이가 일본 올림픽에 맞춰서 일본 그리고 방글라데시와 함께 배우들과 함께 템페스트를 제작하셨는데 그 얘기를 좀 듣고 싶습니다. 아시아의 예술가들과 공동 제작을 하게 된 계기가 무엇이고 사실 팬데믹 때문에 좀 어려우셨을 것 같은데요. 작업하면서 느꼈던 어떤 동질성이라고 하면 조금 애매한데 느끼셨던 여러 가지 경험들이나 성과 같은 것들을 좀 말씀해 주셨으면 좋겠습니다. 여기 한국도 있어서 저희도 앞으로 기회가 된다면 그래이아이와 또 이런 아시아의 배우들과 함께 그런 작업을 할 수 있을지 좋은 영감을 얻을 수 있을 것 같습니다.
I have been an extremely privileged director to have been working in both Bangladesh and Japan, and also a lot of time in Brazil, working with deaf and disabled artists in those countries. And certainly in Bangladesh and Japan, I've been going 2 or 3 times a year for many, many years, developing the creative practice of deaf and disabled artists and giving them the skills to become performers and theatre makers. I have done Romeo and Juliet in both Bangladesh with an all Bangladeshi deaf and disabled cast, and in Japan with a deaf, disabled and non-disabled cast. In both those countries, I had all the main characters played by a disabled actor and a deaf actor. So I had 2 Romeos, 2 Juliets, 2 nurses, one speaking and one signing. It's a fantastic way to work. And because of my work in both those countries, in British Council Japan and Alspot Theatre asked me what play would I like to do and whether we could do something with UK actors, Bengali actors, and Japanese actors. So I said, let's do The Tempest by Shakespeare. And we were all going to go to Japan. We had the first R&D here in the UK. The Japanese artists, Bangladeshi artists all came to Graeae. We had 2 weeks research and development. Then we were going to go to Japan, and then COVID happened. I thought, it's never going to happen. But Alspot said, come on, we could do something. Jenny, what's your plan B? So I framed, my plan B was, I framed the whole production in a rehearsal. And I also added the fact that me, as a director, I'm stuck in the UK. My UK actors are stuck here. We can't travel. We're not allowed to travel. The same with the Bangladeshi actors. So we prepared all of our stuff on film, which was sent to Japan and was part of the set. And I actually directed the whole production on Zoom from the UK, waking up every morning at 4 in the morning to rehearse. Um, and then it was performed live in Tokyo, but with all the content from UK and Bangladesh on film. But it was all rooted in the fact, sorry we can't be there, there's a pandemic, but let's rehearse anyway. So it was very, very in the moment and part of actual history, if you know what I mean. So it happened. It was so challenging, but excitingly challenging, and trying to whenever you're working in a different country, you can't just helicopter and say this I know how to do it. There has to be a real cultural exchange, a real equity and democracy, and a sharing of experiences, and all of that feeds into the final production. And the awareness of how deaf and disabled people are treated in Bangladesh and in Japan and in Brazil, we have a shared understanding of each other because we've had to break down through so many barriers, so many attitudinal barriers to be the people we are, to do the work that we do. So there's always a thread that binds us together.
네. 그래서 추가적으로 묻자면 공연을 어떻게 하셨나요? 그 온라인으로 올림픽 공연, 템페스트를 온라인으로 하셨는지 실제로 공연을 하셨는지 그게 궁금했습니다. 짧게 그 얘기를 좀 해주시면 좋겠습니다.
The performance of The Tempest was live at Alspot Theatre in Japan with the all Japanese cast, and the film content with the UK actors and the Bengali actors. So we were there on film. So it was a live performance to a live Japanese audience, and was performed in June this year.
한국에서 사실 장애 극단, 장애인 예술에 대한 관심이 많아지고 있고, 말씀하셨던 접근성에 대한, 접근성의 언어, 접근성에 대한 미학이라 그럴까요? 거기에 대한 관심이 생겨나고 있습니다. 그래서 그런 것들이 활기를 주고 있고, 장애인 연극, 장애인 극단들이 굉장히 활발하게 활동을 하고 있습니다. 그뿐만 아니라 비장애인 예술가들도 굉장히 많이 참여를 하고, 이쪽 씬이, 이쪽 영역이 활기차게 되어가고 있다고 저는 느끼고 있는데요. 그래서 저희가 금년 다음 달에 말씀하셨던 케이트 오랄리의 작품을 하나는 필름으로, 하나는 실제 공연으로 이제 상연을 하면서 그런 교류나 그런 다양한 기존의 작품들을 소개하고 이런 것들을 시작했습니다. 그래서 저희가 금년에 그런 행사를 통해서 앞으로 교류를 넓혀가려고 하는데요. 혹시 두 가지 질문입니다. 하나는 만약에 그 그래이아이에서 한국에 와서 같이 하거나 보여주고 싶은 작품이 있다면 어떤 것일까? 하나만 고르라면. 그리고 두 번째는 한국에서 이런 일들을 열심히 하고 있는 극단이나 장애인 예술가들, 배우들에게 어떻게 보면 선배로서 앞서서 오랫동안 일을 하셨던 분으로서 전해주고 싶으신 당부, 메시지, 격려 그런 것들이 있으면 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
A dream to come to Korea and to work with deaf and disabled artists to do a play. What play would I do? I think I would have to spend some time talking to disabled artists, say what's your interest, what do you want to do? Is there a Shakespeare that you'd like to do, or is there a classical story that we could devise something? Oh, I have to have a really good think about that. I'm quite excited. I think that the biggest thing is for us as deaf and disabled people, it's about remembering that it is our cultural entitlement to be performers, to be writers, directors, sound designers, lighting designers. Why is this just a profession of non-disabled people? It's not. We need to be good at what we do. Because when we do work, people will look and be more critical, say, that was nice, those lovely disabled people. No, we don't want pity and we don't want worthiness. We want to be really, really brilliant at being performers, directors, writers, etc. So my message is, fight for it, but be good at it. It's 20 years since we did Kate O'Reilly's Peeling, which profiles 3 disabled women. Maybe it's time to do a Korean revival of Kate's play with rewrites that make it very specific, the experience of deaf and disabled women in Korea. Why not?
저희가 필링을 해보려고 했습니다. 청각장애인 배우가 꼭 필요하다고 케이트가 얘기를 해서 청각장애인 배우를 찾다가 그게 좀 어려워서 중간에 다른 작품으로 좀 바꾸게 됐는데요. 다음번에 할 때는 꼭 필링을 한번 도전해보는 계기를 갖도록 하겠습니다. 네, 오늘 저희가 영국에서 장애의 사회적 모델이라는 조금 추상적인 개념에 대한 얘기도 많이 들어왔는데, 그것이 어떻게 예술단체한테 적용이 되고 실천되고 어떻게 발언으로 예술적 표현으로 드러나는지에 대한 사례를 본 것 같고요. 그에 더해서 접근성의 미학이 어떻게 장애를 가진 예술단체한테 가장 큰 무기가 될 수 있고 독특한 언어가 될 수 있는지에 대한 그 면을 조금 들여다본 것 같습니다. 굉장히 흥미로운 얘기였고요. 이 얘기를 본격적으로 펼쳐갈 수 있는 그런 기회를 앞으로 같이 만들어 보는데 노력을 해주시면 좋겠습니다. 오늘 얘기 너무 즐거웠습니다. 감사합니다.
I would like to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
감사합니다. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for translating. Sorry I kept talking in longer chunks, making it more difficult for you. I'm really sorry about that. But thank you.